Good afternoon. Welcome to a pre-recorded demonstration on how an LEA with an in-house program would submit a student referral to their in-house program. So I'm going to log in as an LEA that has an in-house provider. And on this main index screen, you'll see student referrals in the middle of application and options. You'll see it right here. And specifically the link referrals created by your LEA. We're going to go ahead and create a referral, but first you'll notice that it lists referrals already created by your LEA and the status that they're currently in. When a referral is created and before it's submitted to the provider, it's in process. After the provider, quote unquote, accepts it, it'll be in placement. And once it's reaccepted by the LEA, it's in post placement. And while it's transitioning between these three statuses, you'll see that it could be transitioning to provider or transitioning back to the LEA. So we'll create a new referral from scratch by clicking this green plus sign. Now here, you would typically enter a secure ID, and more times than not, it's going to find that student secure ID in the PIMS database, and it's going to pre-fill a lot of the demographic information for you so you don't have to. Seeing as I'm just punching in a random number for a test school district, obviously it's not going to find a match. If this is the case, you can always manually add the student by clicking this button here. And in this instance, you would just have to enter some basic demographic information before proceeding into the referral. Grade, date of birth, and so on. Gender, ethnicity, and race, and exceptionality. Once you've completed all this information, you'd click Create Referral at the bottom of the screen. This will take you to the Keystone Scores page where you can enter any PSSA or Keystone scores for this student. Keep in mind that you can always come back to this section, so if you don't have those scores handy at the time, you can go right to the referral demographics. Since this is a test referral, I'm going to go ahead and click here just to add one to show. And it's just school year, test type, grade level, subject, and score. Click Save Score. You'll have the option to add another one or proceed from here right to the demographics page, which we'll do. Now, if it doesn't already, I recommend clicking this black bar on the left-hand side, which opens up the flyout menu, and then clicking the push pin. This shows the sections of the referral in order, and you can easily navigate from one to another just by using the flyout menu on the left. You'll see that the demographic information that I entered a moment ago is now pre-filled in this section in bold. You have the option to toggle the grade and primary exceptionality because occasionally this information might come back from PIMS inaccurate. This gives you the option to change it to the proper grade and or exceptionality. If you were to add this student referral and it found the student in the PIMS grab, you would have landed right on this page with all the information already pre-filled in, like so. And as I mentioned before, if you wanted to add a PSSA or Keystone score after the fact, the link is right down here next to the header. So this is the first of 5 sections in the pre-placement section of the referral, and the goal is to complete all required information before submitting the referral to your in-house provider. There's demographics, which we can see. Section 2 is the criteria or reasons that the referral is being created. Section 3 is behaviors and interventions, and we'll go into this in more depth shortly. Section 4, verification, and Section 5, manifestation. So to show the submission process, on the demographic screen, the first section, is where you'll always find the option or method to submit a referral or move it on down the line. So if I was to click Submit Student Referral to AEDY Provider, this screen is going to run a series of tests to make sure all information has been entered before you can submit it to the in-house provider. And you have to do that by clicking Validate. Now, the first thing we notice is we haven't selected a reason for referral. This is the first thing that needs to be done before the process can determine what other information is required. Anytime you fail validation on this page, it'll tell you the section and the issue, and the issue description will always be a link to that particular section where you can make the change. So if we click this, it takes us to section 2, reasons for referral, and we haven't chose one. So we'll go ahead and choose violent or threatening behavior and click Save. You can save and stay or save and proceed to the next section, but just for the sake of demonstration, I'll click Save and Stay so that you can see anytime you successfully save changes to a section of the referral, you'll get this confirmation at the top of the page. So now that we have chosen the reason for referral, if we were to circle back to demographics and try submitting the referral to the provider again, and we click Validate, we'll see here's the actual information that the referral needs in order for you to submit it. In the demographics section, we need the guardian information. In the verification section, we need to choose the provider that we're sending this referral to. Yes, it's sent to your in-house provider, but that still has to be set. And at least one completed disruptive behavior is required in the behavior intervention section. So we'll just go through each of the 5 sections in order. Demographics, we know from this list that guardian information is required, and that's over here. So we'll just punch in the guardian name, phone, and email. Now for phone and email, you can list that information or click NA if you don't have it. One or the other needs to be entered in order to proceed past validation. Never forget to click Save at the bottom of the page. If I click Save and go to next section, we come to section 2, criteria, which we've already entered. If we go to Save and go to next section, we need a disruptive behavior from that message. And I'll circle back real quick. If I validate, we'll see that the guardian information has passed, but we need at least one completed disruptive behavior. So we'll come back to the behaviors and interventions section and click Add New Disruptive Behavior. All that's required based on this reason for referral is the date of the disruptive behavior and a description. Enter the date and the description and click Save. It lets you know that the information has been saved and you now have access to the 3 types of interventions for a behavior: administrative, counselor, and SAP. So if we go into administrative, we'll see the date and description of the behavior listed at the top, as well as the types of interventions for this section: reflection documents, school activities, involvement in meetings, child study, any other intervention that was attempted, and in school versus out of school suspensions and dates. Based on the reasons for referral, none of this specific information is required, but if you were to choose a different set of reasons for referral, this may or may not be required. Also, at the bottom of each of these sections is an upload tool where you'll have the option to upload any electronic file that you deem is relevant to this behavior and or referral. So I'll just choose a test file off the desktop. You can enter optional description here, click upload, and there it is. This is the administrative section of this behavior, and counselor and SAP sections are also available on this left side navigation while we're inside of a specific behavior. Behavior list will link you back out to the main part of the referral, but I'll quickly click counselor, where you can see that the interventions of parent contact, action plan, check-in, schedule mod, conflict resolution, mentoring, peer mediation, referral to group, and individual or community-based counseling options are here, where you would simply enter the date and the possible outcome of the intervention. Once again, you see a file upload tool at the bottom of this section, as well as the third section, SAP referrals, contact with outside agencies, mental health, counseling, services, and whether or not the parent or student refused SAP. Once you've entered all information in regards to this behavior, you can click back to behavior list, where you'll see all behaviors entered on this screen, and this is just the one that we entered for this demonstration. If there's multiple behaviors, you would click add new disruptive behavior again and repeat the process. The fourth section, verification, includes information about the informal hearing, when it was scheduled, the date and specifically the time, and the date and time that the parent was contacted to attend the hearing. The next piece is the location of the hearing, LEA, students, residents, or other. If you were to choose other, you would need to enter a description of the location. And this piece is important. The result of the informal hearing immediate placement is the student will be placed in the blank AEDY program. You'll need to choose your in-house program from this list. This list will most likely only be your in-house program, but you still need to choose it and save it in order for the validation to pass in the future. So we'll choose the in-house program associated with this LEA, click Save and Stay, and the information, the changes have been saved. The fifth section, manifestation, has two affirmations. One, I affirm that the manifestation was conducted. You would need to check that and date it. And two, I affirm that the SES was viewed and approved. Also check that and date it. The last piece in the pre-placement section is the option to attach a special education document. This is simply any file you might have that you feel can be useful with this referral, but doesn't necessarily apply to any other section within the pre-placement part of the referral. You'll see a corresponding drop-down of possible file types, NoRep, FBA, ER, IEP, whatever. If it's none of these, you have the option to choose other, put a description of what the file actually is, and then submit it. Upload it. So I uploaded it. You'll see the file is here, accessible by anyone who has access to the referral, but only the actual user who uploaded this document has the option to delete it. If we were to go back to demographics and try submitting this referral to the in-house provider again, you'll see the option is now simply changing the status of the referral to submitted to provider. Here you would enter an email of someone at the in-house provider that you feel would need to know about the incoming student referral, and you have the option to enter any additional information that will be included in the body of the email that gets sent out. So I'll click Submit Referral to Provider. The referral status was successfully changed. Click here to return to the demographic page for this referral. Now, seeing as you're submitting it to an in-house provider, and this may or may not be someone at the provider that uses the same login as you, you can theoretically continue working on this referral or log out, and the person who received that email would then log in, whether it's with their own login and password, or what if you share one, they would then come in and proceed to the placement section of the referral. We'll see that the status of the referral has changed to transition to provider. So let's say we logged out and the user at the in-house facility got the email and logged in to continue working on this referral. They would do the same thing that you did initially. They would log in and click referrals created by your LEA. And now they're going to see that referral in the referrals transitioning to AEDY provider tab. We'll click it and we'll see the referral that we created is right here. View edit. Now before working on the referral, the provider is going to want to change the status to in placement, so we know when the student's placement began. click change status of referral. And if the provider just wants to accept the referral, it's a one-click procedure right here. But if for some reason they wanted to reject the referral and send it back to the LEA, they would enter an email of who would be emailed, a reason they're rejecting it, which would be included in the body of the email, and they would click reject. This will let the original person know, and it will roll the referral status back to in process. We're not going to do that. We're going to accept referral. The status was successfully changed. Click here to return to the demographics page of this referral. Or you can just navigate right to the page you want to work on. As the in-house provider that I just accepted the referral, I most likely want to proceed to the placement section in the placement tab. Now, the placement section, where the provider will be filling this information in, is a three-step process. You want to enter the placement date, and then calculate the presumptive exit date, and then if that date falls perfectly in a schedule, you'll want to set this placement and exit date. So if I was to say that today is the placement date, I would enter 7/1, I'd click calculate. It determines that the exit date will be 45 calendar weekdays, which is September 2nd, and then I would set this placement and exit date by clicking this green button. Once the placement date has been determined, it'll be over here on the left in green, and you'll land in the first presumptive exit date panel. There is a few questions within the panel itself, whether or not the student was present during the first and or second semester, the date of the status update meeting, and the outcome of the status update meeting. At any time, you can click Save this information to lock in what you've already entered. If there's ever a need to postpone the presumptive exit date by 1 or more days, you would click View Modify Presumptive Exit Date right here and adjust. It would list the current exit date, the new proposed exit date, which would only be 1 weekday in the future. So if this happened to be a Friday, this would roll over to Monday, and choose a reason from this drop-down as to why you're postponing the exit date. Parent-teacher conference, fall break, weather emergency, pretty much every scenario has been covered in this list. So we'll say weather emergency, and we will click adjust. Now this page lists each time that the exit date was postponed, the previous exit date, the current, how many days it was advanced, and the reason. Once we are satisfied with the current exit date, we can return to the placement details, and you'll see that it is updated on this screen to show that it's actually the 3rd now as opposed to the 2nd. You would do this however many times you would need within the 45-day window until it's time to determine the result of the placement, which is 2 options. They're ready for transition, they're ready to transition back to the LEA, or remain in placement. So if I was to click remain in placement, it's going to calculate another 45 weekdays from that day, which would be 11/5, and you would also have to describe why you've determined that the student needs to remain in placement for another 45-day period. So if I was to enter something and click remain in placement, we're now in the 2nd presumptive exit date of 11/5, and this behaves the same way as the first presumptive exit date did. Students' presence during the first and second semester, date of status update meeting, and result. Save this information. You have the option to adjust the exit date the same way you did on the first panel, and after 45 days this time, once again, you'll have the same options. Remain in placement for a 3rd stay or transition back to the LEA. This time we'll click transition back to the LEA by clicking ready for transition. And you'll see you have determined the student is ready to transition back to the classroom. After entering the transition date below, click begin transition, and you'll then be required to upload a transition plan and fill out the placement survey that appears at the top of this page. So we've determined the student's ready to transition back to the LEA. We'll enter the transition date and click Begin Transition. Now you'll see that information is still saved down here, but above it appears an upload tool where you would upload a transition plan. You'll need to date it as well, and then a survey of how the student performed in placement. Did his or her GPA improve? And then a checkbox where you would list anything that applies to all considerations that your program considered when giving a student a summary grade for a class or a course. So you can't proceed to submitting this back to the LEA until a transition plan is uploaded. And by doing that, it behaves the same way as all the other upload tools do. We would just click Choose File, find the file, click Open, enter an optional description, a required transition date, and then Upload. The file is uploaded. It shows it right underneath the tool. And for survey, if they improve their GPA, yes, no, or duration of attendance was less than 1/4, and then any of these checkboxes that apply. And be sure to click Save Survey Information at the bottom of this section right here. Changes have been saved. You, as the in-house provider, has done your part. The referral is ready to be submitted back to the LEA users. And by doing so, we would go to Demographics and change status of the referral. You see the option Send Referral Back to LEA. We're going to want to put an email in there. And an optional note that'll be included in the body of the email. Submit student referral back to LEA by clicking this button right here. This person will be emailed and alerted that the student/referral is on its way back to the LEA classroom setting. And we can click here to go to the demographics section of the referral. But instead of doing that, I'm going to click Home and show you that in the referral dashboard, that referral is now under transitioning back to LEA, Doug Jones. So whether or not the LEA user and provider user share a login will determine if you need to log in or not. But let's say, for the sake of this demonstration, I logged out as the provider. The next day, or however many days down the road, the LEA user logs in and clicks Referrals Created by LEA and navigates to this referral, clicks View Edit, and they must change the status of the referral from Transition to LEA to Received by LEA in order for them to complete the post-placement outcomes section. So as the LEA user, I'll click Change. Once the LEA user has accepted the referral back to the LEA, now I understand it's never actually leaving the LEA, but for the sake of the status, it's transitioning to the provider and transitioning back. Now that the LEA has reaccepted the referral, next time they log in, they'll see that the referral is now in the post-placement status. Click the number here. If there's more than one, you'll see all of them on the list, but here's the one that we're doing for this demonstration, Doug Jones. Click View Edit Referral, and the last stage of the process would be to fill the post-placement outcomes information. Simply click that link, and all that's left to do is this radio about the general outcomes. Select one from the following list: student transitioned successfully, or was removed, dropped out, whatever the case may be. And then the transition end date, and whether or not the transition back to the LEA was successful. Save and stay. You'll see this confirmation box, and the last thing to do is to close the referral. You would click on the demographic screen, you would click Change Status of the Referral, and see this option to close the student referral. Click the button below to close the referral. The referral will no longer display on your dashboard, and you'll then be able to begin a new referral for this student in the future. Clicking this button, once you do that, the referral is filed away in a closed status, meaning you can now create a new referral for this same secure ID in the future. Obviously, you will not be able to create a referral if there's one already in process. You would need to have that referral follow the steps to completion and or have it removed if there's a set of special circumstances. That completes the process for submitting a referral to your in-house provider. Should you have any more questions regarding this, you can always click the help link in the top right and reach out to either Patan or us here at Leader Services by clicking one of the links. Thank you for attending. Have a good afternoon.